I'm here with my friend Frank from Truth in Energy. We're talking about ESG and solar and nuclear. And Frank, you take it. Tell me a little bit about what ESG is doing to our energy.
Well, ESG is a whole idea of, they couldn't get it at the ballot box. It's environmental, social governance. And what they want to do is decarbonize the world. But 80% of our energy comes from oil, coal, and natural gas. And the rest of the world, the non-Western world, is building hundreds of coal plants. The Chinese are building more than anybody else. They burn half the 8 billion tons of coal every year. And we want to decarbonize at huge expense. And it's going to create more energy poverty. And they're trying to replace it with wind and solar. The problem is that won't work in the real world, and we're hardly building any at all in the real world. They're hard to place, they're expensive, and they don't want you to know that if we were going to power just our electricity, and we'd always have a part-time problem with them, is we need 8,000 square miles of solar panels.
8,000 square miles of solar panels.
8,000 square miles of solar panels to make enough electricity for the United States, and close to 1 million wind towers. We have 75,000 wind towers today in America, and they produce about 9% of our electricity. Contrast that with, we have 240 coal plants in America, and they make 22% of our electricity. Yeah. And electricity is only 1/3 of the energy we use. So we're not even talking about the other 2/3. That's why they want to push us into electric vehicles. This is all about controlling people in electric vehicles. The problem is there'll be no more inexpensive cars. Yeah. That $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 car, that starter car for a teenager or college student or someone who's poor and struggling or on the way up or on the way down, it won't exist anymore. There's a story of a young family that bought a $11,000 used electric car, had 60,000 miles on it. They had it a very short time, and the battery broke down. It ended. Cost them $14,000 to get a new one. Yeah. So the whole idea is to push us into electric cars so they can control us. And then they want bidirectional batteries as well. So when the electric grid, because they're going to force that to fail, is failing, they'll just draw electricity off your electric car. So that now you go to power it up, you have an important meeting the next day, you get up, your car's empty because, well, they didn't have enough electricity and they needed yours.
Now, I think out in California, Pacific Electric and Gas is pushing for, they're investing money in putting battery packs in people's houses that have solar panels for that purpose of being able to draw down.
Well, they're wildly expensive. The problem with batteries is they're wildly expensive. There's not enough lithium in the world to build electric vehicle batteries, millions of them, and we are building millions of them already. The Chinese are leading in that. And then to build industrial scale batteries. They're just very expensive, and no one would do that in the real world with finances without getting a whole bunch of tax subsidies. First of all, even to put up solar panels, because they're more expensive without the subsidies. You wouldn't do it because the payback's longer than the 20 years they last. Yeah. And then you add batteries expensive to that too. It's nuts. The problem California has is they've overinvested in solar panels. So in the winter, when it's sunny there, because it's sunny almost all the time, they produce too much electricity. You can have that problem too. They used to pay Arizona money to take their electricity. Until last year, Arizona said, we're not taking your electricity, you're paying for us to take, because it screws up our electric grid. Wow. Because you have to shut everything else down when you're getting that free electricity. So in California, they produce too much electricity for their electric grid, so they want to shuttle them and turn them off or divert them to batteries. So that's the political thing, but it's wildly expensive, is to divert them to batteries. And then in the summer, they don't produce enough when they really need it, when it's really hot and sunny. There's just not enough electricity. California is so crazy. They import 30% of their electricity, and they want to close down their remaining nuclear power plant that's zero carbon, and that's what they say is so important, next year, and then they'll import 40% of their electricity, and they say they're going green. I mean, they're nuts.
Well, so what happens in another 6 months or so? Lake Mead falls below the level where they can't produce power anymore. We already know in California and it's parts of the South where you have these brownouts. So Lake Mead stops producing. They shut down their last nuclear power plant. What happens to California?
Well, Bill, they'll have. I lived in California in the '70s when they had shortage of electricity because of shortage of energy all over the place. We had rolling blackouts. They'd black out a city of 100,000 people for 2 to 4 hours, then a different city, then a different city, different city. They're doing this now in Pakistan, a country of 225 million people. They just shut off the electricity for 48 hours, 4 to 8 hours every day. They just don't have enough electricity. There's professors now who are saying in the rush to get to green energy, maybe Americans need to give up 24/7 electricity to go green, and maybe we should just shut down the grid for a few hours every day. I mean, this is the type of crazy talk they have when we have plenty. We have literally hundreds of years in our own country and across the world of coal, oil, and natural gas, and there's no climate emergency. They're making this stuff up, folks. Water vapor is the most important, abundant, this is according to NASA, not Frank Lasee. This is not disputed. Water vapor is the most abundant, important greenhouse gas, and it's 50 times more abundant than carbon dioxide. And they both do the same thing. It's very much, if you like a cocktail, it's like taking an ounce of alcohol that you drink, has 560 drops in it, and dropping in 11 more drops, having a couple drinks and saying, the whole reason I feel this is those extra 11 drops.
Yeah.
And that's what they're saying is the 11 drops do it. And if you confront someone on the left who understands this, they say, oh, it's the feedback loop. Because warm air can hold more moisture than cold air, the world will just keep warming up over and because it'll just get more and more moist.
Yeah.
Well, if that's true, why isn't the air over a desert really moist?
Yeah.
It's very dry.
Yeah.
So just because it's hot and warm doesn't mean you're going to have more moisture.
Well, you know, it's interesting. Being from outside of Philadelphia, we just broke a record with heat that was a 100-year-old record. So for the last 100 years, these temperatures really haven't changed much, but a quarter of a degree.
No, they haven't changed hardly at all. And, you know, Noah cooks their books. These people they lie. Unfortunately, they lie. You can't even trust the records. And it's very hard to know exactly what the truth is. The fact is, though, even according to Noah, who cooks their own temperature books, is that we're getting less 90 and 100-degree days now than we did 50 or 100 years ago. The 1930s were much warmer than it is now, much drier than it is now. And going back to your question about Lake Mead, California, historically over the long term, factually, they've had multi-decade droughts. They've had 200-year droughts in the southwestern part of the United States. So that could happen again. And that's natural, all before the benefits of CO2. So, and I say benefits because we're worldwide greening because of CO2. We have more NASA, I just reread this yesterday, the 2016 article. If you look at NASA fertilization CO2, you'll get it on Google yet before they've hidden it or taken it down.
Yeah.
And it shows that the Earth is 30% greener over the last 40 years because of the fertilization effect of CO2. They think that the volume of greening, the more leaf mass, green mass, is double the size of the United States across the world. Wow. And worldwide crop harvests are up everywhere. But now they want to change that. You know, you see in Netherlands, they're going after nitrogen. Well, farmers pay for nitrogen. You don't want it to run off your field. It doesn't get in the air. Nitrogen is the most abundant molecule in the air. So they're going after farming and food on purpose. Canada's following suit. Ireland's following suit. They want to limit food production to create starvation. And this is evil when you do it when there's already a food shortage. These people, you know, some of them are useful idiots. They don't know the facts. Forgive them for what they do. And there must be some other people who are truly evil when they want to starve people for no real good purpose other than control.
Well, and so that's what's going on. That's the problem. But you have some solutions. You have some model legislation that you're pushing. Well, why don't you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, one is that we need to these climate crazies want to close down the last 240 coal power plants in America before they're doing, and it's very expensive. It's like trashing your car, getting rid of your car, and you still have to make payments on it. It's like tearing down your house while you still owe a mortgage on it. When you tear down a coal plant before it's paid off, you still have to keep paying for it. So they want to do that first of all. And in their rush, they don't even have enough wind or solar built. They don't want natural gas replacements. They just want to close them down. They're causing blackouts across the country. Right now, 2/3 of our country have blackout warnings from now in the future, and the regulators admit they've allowed too many coal plants to be closed, but that hasn't stopped these climate crazies from wanting to close even more of them. We shouldn't allow them, this is state law for states, that would require that the Public Service Commission, or their version of it, would have to have proof that it wouldn't short them on electricity, that they have enough electricity to keep it reliable, and that it wouldn't increase costs for their consumers by closing these down. And those two things they have to prove before they could close it down. And I think that's really important that we protect for national security and economic security. In Europe right now, where they've been climate crazy ahead of us, they've taken mothballed coal plants back out and are putting coal back in them and burning them. Their emissions are going through, they're skyrocketing because they relied on Russia for natural gas. But they have enough natural gas right in Europe. It was their regulators, the same thing Biden and troops want to do here in America, is stop us from harvesting our own energy for no good purpose, because it's based on a lie.
So your bill would prevent the shutdown of power plants if they don't have a replacement?
Correct.
Excellent.
And if it raises costs.
And if it raises costs.
Yes.
Anything else you want to add to this?
You know, folks, we have to address this head on. I advocate that you don't engage too much with the climate crazies, but that you talk with people in the middle, because this has really become a really important issue, because energy is what makes everything happen. Yeah. Without energy, we don't get fed, we don't have a car, we don't have a plane, you don't have a cell phone, you don't get Netflix. It's important. Yeah. So we need to protect our energy, and for national security risks. Communist China is on the rise. They're not buying any of this green BS. The two largest oil companies in the world that you've probably never heard of in terms of revenue are both owned by the Chinese Communist Party, Sinopec and PetroChina. Yeah. And they don't do ESG. Going back to ESG, they don't do ESG. They don't care about that. They don't care if it's they, them, their. They don't care about any of that stuff.
And if you really do, let me just make this point, if you really do care about the environment, why would you want to switch production and energy production over to a country that has absolutely no regulations?
And uses slave labor.
And uses, yes.
I mean, maybe absolutely no is strong, but they have next to none. Yeah. And slave labor, and they burn coal. Yeah. 60% of all their energy in China comes from coal. And 60%, and growing.
Not the clean stuff that you get out of West Virginia and Pennsylvania, the dirty stuff.
And they don't put clean coal technology on their coal plants because it costs extra money. It costs you extra money up front, and you lose about 20% of the energy downstream. People don't know that 30 to 50% of all of the drywall in America is made with the solids that come out of our clean coal technology plants. Yep. So that coal plant has a drywall plant nearby that employs dozens, if not hundreds of people, and supplies the local building trade for us to expand and put more houses up for more people. And I think more people and more prosperity are good things, and these green policies that they're doing, that's the real existential threat, are the green policies, not this fake climate change stuff.
Great. All right, and tell us, name your organization and how we can follow you.
Get more information from truthinenergyandclimate.com. Sign up for our weekly email newsletter. Donate to spread the truth. We're dedicated to providing the real truth, and I know it's really hard when you go out there. Like if you Google ice in Antarctica, for instance, you'll find out that you'll think it's all melting. Because on one western part of it, first of all, it's huge. It's bigger than North America. It's bigger than the United States. It's covered in ice. In one part of it, a peninsula has a whole bunch of volcanoes underneath, and it's warming the water from underneath. So that's melting some over on that side. You won't find, even if you use the key words, the peer-reviewed study that shows that Antarctica has not warmed for 70 years. You'll not find that. So they're hiding this information from us, and according to the global warming scam expert predictions, both poles should be warming, but only the North Pole is warming a little bit. So Truth in Energy and Climate, sign up for our newsletter. You get great energy and climate information every week, and we won't sell your information. So have a fantastic day, and we need to continue to push back and have good policy, not bad policy.
Great. Thank you so much.
Bill, it's a pleasure.
Frank, my pleasure.